Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories about hiking in the Appalachia. These stories will make you think twice before stepping off the path. But before we begin, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now let's start. I was 3 days into a solo hike through the Appalachian Mountains when things really went sideways. This trip was supposed to be my reset button. I'd been drowning in noise, emails, meetings, constant pings, and I just wanted quiet. No people, no notifications, no traffic humming in the background, just trees. That's all I wanted. So I planned this down to the smallest detail. Every route, every meal, every ounce of gear. I had maps, a compass, a backup GPS. I wasn't some weekend warrior. I'd done long hikes before. I trusted myself out here, and for 3 days, everything went exactly the way I wanted. Silence. Big, endless skies. Trails that looked like they belonged in old nature calendars. No voices but mine. By the third morning, it felt like the rest of the world had fallen away. No phone signal, no Wi-Fi, no distant hum of anything man-made. Just me and the woods. Honestly, it was perfect. That morning, the trail dipped into a hollow, then climbed slow and easy before flattening out along a ridge. I walked for hours, boots crunching on dirt, poles tapping the ground. My mind was just empty, which was kind of the point. At one point, I started counting my steps, for no reason other than to hear numbers in my head instead of deadlines. Around noon, I saw something nailed to a tree, a trail marker, or what used to be one. The paint was barely there, faded down to a ghost color. The wood looked like it had been through 100 storms. Still, I figured it was pointing north, so I followed. That was the mistake. Another hour went by, no more markers. The path was still there, but it looked different, thinner. Roots knotted across it like tripwires. The soil had changed too, darker, softer, like it held more water. I pulled out my GPS just to check. Screen lit up fine, but the little dot showing me, floating on a blank stretch of green. No trail, no reference point, nothing. And here's where the voice in my head started doing its thing. That's weird. But the other voice, the dumb, prideful one, chimed in louder. Relax. Trails change all the time. People carve shortcuts. Maybe this is an older route that didn't make the updated map. Sounded reasonable enough, so I kept walking. Big mistake number 2. Another hour slid by. And the vibe, yeah, I know, I hate that word too, shifted. The trees didn't look normal anymore. Not old growth beautiful, more like warped. Bent in ways trees don't usually bend. The bark had these deep grooves, like scars. Some trunks had swollen knots that bulged like joints. And the roots, God, the roots, curled out of the dirt like claws. That's when I noticed something tied around a trunk up ahead. My first thought, finally, a marker. My second thought, no, that's not right. It wasn't bright orange or blue, like the usual ones. It was a strip of fabric, sun-bleached, almost white, frayed at the edges. Been there for years by the look of it. After that, I slowed way down. And that's when I started spotting more of it. Little things, bits of rope knotted to branches. Another strip of fabric, this one stained and torn. Then something worse. A rusted chain looped low to the ground, still locked in a circle, like it used to hold something. That's when the sensible part of my brain woke up and whispered, turn around. And I almost did. Almost. But I hate admitting when I screw up, so I kept going for maybe 10 more minutes. Then I caved and turned around, retracing what I thought were my own footprints, except nothing looked the same. I scanned for the first fabric marker. Gone. The rope? Gone. The chain? Gone. Just trees. And more trees. Thick, crowding, leaning too close. The trail under my boots didn't even feel right anymore. It had that spongy give, like walking on a wet sponge. Mud clung heavy to my soles, sucking at every step. And then I saw them, footprints, not boots, bare feet, small, sinking deep into the mud, toes spread wide like they were gripping hard for balance. They led off the path into the undergrowth. I just stood there, staring. My brain threw out the usual excuses. Maybe a kid wandered off. Maybe someone went swimming and didn't put their shoes back on. Except, where? There was no water nearby, and I hadn't seen a single human in 2 days. I made myself keep walking, eyes forward. One foot, then the other. That's when I heard it, soft, behind me. A sound like something peeling out of mud. That slow, sucking pull. I froze. Every muscle locked. My heart was punching so hard I felt it in my teeth. One step, then another, deliberate. Heavy enough to matter, light enough to make me doubt my ears. I spun around so fast my trekking poles clattered to the ground. Just trees. Damp, dark, slick with moss. Okay, I told myself, out loud this time. You're hearing things. Mud settling. That's all. But I started moving faster, almost jogging now. Kept glancing over my shoulder every couple steps. And that's when I saw them again. Footprints. Only now, they were in front of me, the same size, same bare, splayed toes, leading in the same direction I was going. That was the moment the cold hit my stomach like a brick. I should have stopped, turned back, picked literally any other direction, but I didn't. Because the alternative, standing there while whatever was out there caught up, felt worse. So I kept following. Don't ask me why. Fear does dumb things to your brain. The prints led me to something pale sticking out of the mud near a tree. I thought it was another strip of fabric. It wasn't. It was a hand. Small, gray-white, half-buried, fingers curled, like it had been reaching for something. I swear every nerve in my body just shut down. My knees nearly gave out. I closed my eyes, opened them again. And it was gone. The mud was smooth. Perfect. That broke me. I ran. Didn't care where, just ran. Branches whipped my arms raw, mud dragged at my boots. I ran until my lungs burned and I crashed against a tree, gasping. For half a second, I thought maybe the panic made me hallucinate. Maybe none of it was real. Until I looked down. Footprints. Bare, small, leading straight toward me. My breath locked in my throat. And then I heard it. A voice. Soft, flat, like it wasn't coming from a mouth. Like it was just in the air. Don't leave me here. That was it. That was all I needed to hear. I bolted, I don't know how far, long enough for my pack to rip open and spill half my gear, long enough for my legs to get shredded by branches, and I didn't stop to care. Then, like a miracle, I saw it. A blaze, bright orange slash on bark, a real trail marker. I almost hugged the damn tree. I followed them until I stumbled out onto the main trail. By then, the light was almost gone. I couldn't tell you how I set up camp or if I even ate. I just sat there, shivering, staring at the dark tree line until the sun came up. When I checked my map the next day, there was nothing. No side trail, no old route, nothing but empty forest. I left the mountains that morning and swore I'd never come back. I started hiking before sunrise, the way you do when you want the trail to yourself. The Blue Ridge section of the Appalachians demands patience. And honestly, I like that about it. It keeps you honest. I had 3 liters of water, 2 protein bars, a first aid kit, and a paper map so worn it felt more like fabric than paper at this point. My plan was straightforward. Hike 6 miles in, find the ridge, have lunch with a view, and head back before dark. Simple enough. The first few hours? Perfect. This is what I go out there for. Trail markers were bright and obvious, the kind you barely need to look for because they practically wave at you. The path was steady, A lot of switchbacks, nothing too crazy. The air still smelled damp from the rain the night before, and everything underfoot had that soft give, like walking on a mattress that someone left outside too long. I passed 2 groups of campers before noon. We nodded, traded the usual morning with that quick hiker smile, and kept going. No lingering conversations, which I was grateful for. I wasn't out there for company. I was out there for the silence. That kind of heavy quiet where you start hearing your own breathing like it's an echo. Around midday, I stopped to drink near a narrow stream that cut across the trail. That threw me for a second. There wasn't supposed to be water here. I pulled out the map and squinted at the lines like maybe I'd just been looking at it wrong. According to this thing, the next water source was at the bottom of the next valley, not right here in front of me. I told myself it wasn't a big deal. Maybe the rain had been heavier than I realized and some seasonal runoff had created a temporary stream. Nature does that, no reason to overthink it. So I kept going. The trail stuck close to the stream and I figured, fine, it'll split off eventually. Except it didn't. It bent and curved like a vein through the woods, and I kept following because the ground still looked tamped down, like people had walked it before, but the longer I stayed on it, the more wrong it felt. It hit me when the trail markers disappeared. No blazes on the trees, no nailed signs. I turned in a slow circle, scanning bark like I was looking for a lifeline. Nothing. Every tree looked the same. That's not unusual in itself. Markers can fade or fall. But there was this moment where I realized I hadn't seen one in a while, and now I couldn't even remember when the last one was. My gut tightened in a way I didn't like. I decided to backtrack, except when I did, I swear, the trail didn't look the same. It was just ground, leaves, the kind of nothing that makes you feel stupid for thinking you were ever on a trail to begin with. That's when I pulled out my compass. North was still north, so I picked a direction that should have led me back to the main path. 15 minutes later, I stopped dead. The stream was in front of me again, only now it was wider, like something upstream had burst. Water pushed hard against the banks, fast and loud. That was impossible. I'd been walking in a straight line, away from it. I just stood there for a minute, trying to make sense of it. My brain kept circling the same thought. No way. I crouched down, touched the soil near the edge. It was soft and uneven, like something heavy had pressed into it, but the shapes weren't footprints. They were deep, round, dense, warped in ways that made my skin crawl. And they were full of water, like little bowls sunken into the ground. I pulled out my phone. No signal. That wasn't surprising, but I still checked twice because I needed that reassurance. Nothing. I looked at the compass again. The needle twitched like it had the hiccups every time I turned. That was new. So I made a decision. Follow the stream. Water leads somewhere. Civilization, a road, a cabin, anything. I walked for what felt like an hour but was probably 20 minutes before I saw something hanging from a low branch ahead. At first glance it looked like fabric, pale and torn, fluttering in the breeze. For a second I thought maybe it was from a camper's shirt, someone who took a bad fall. I got closer. It wasn't fabric, it was skin, dried, yellowed, curled at the edges like parchment. The kind of thing you'd see in a museum jar, except it was swaying from a tree in the middle of nowhere. My body froze before my brain even caught up. I stared too long before instinct kicked in and told me to move. I didn't touch it. I didn't even breathe near it. I just walked faster, my boots crunching louder than they should have in the silence. That's when I noticed the silence. Not just quiet. The absence of everything. No birds, no wind through the leaves, no bugs buzzing in my ears. It felt like the woods had been vacuum sealed. I told myself it was just me freaking out, that fear makes your senses lie. That's when I saw the clearing and the structure. It stood about 10 feet tall, made from branches lashed together with something dark. I didn't want to know what that something was. Bones hung from the crossbeams, pale and smooth like someone had spent time polishing them. When the wind stirred, they clicked softly against each other, the kind of sound that burrows into your spine. I didn't go closer. I didn't need to. I turned and ran. I didn't think. I didn't look back. Just ran the way I thought I'd come, lungs on fire, boots slipping on damp soil. But when I finally stopped, because I had to, I heard it again. The stream. I wanted to throw up. The water cut across the ground like it had been waiting for me. Only this time, something was in it. Moving. Not fish, not branches. Something pale slid under the surface, long and jointed, rolling like it had bones. I froze, long enough to see it vanish, when I stepped near the edge. That broke me. I dumped half my gear so I could run lighter. My map, my food, I didn't care. I clawed uphill, downhill, any direction that looked open. The compass needle spun like it was drunk. The map felt like trash in my hand. Nothing made sense anymore. The trees were thicker now, though I didn't remember them being this dense before. The light was dim, even though it was barely afternoon. It felt like the sun had given up on this part of the world. I kept running until my legs turned to fire, until I couldn't hear anything over the pounding in my ears. Then, gravel, hard under my boots. I almost fell when the ground changed. I stumbled out onto a wide, flat path, a real one. Ahead, nailed to a post, was a sign. No access beyond this point. Past the sign, the woods looked the same. Behind me, the trail stretched clean and perfect like it had always been there. I walked half a mile before the parking lot appeared and my car sat there like a miracle. I didn't look back. I drove until I saw cell bars flicker on my phone. Then I drove another 50 miles before I even thought about stopping. My boots were caked in mud by the time we reached the second overlook. The plan was simple. 5-mile loop, nothing crazy, back at the car before sunset. That's what Wes promised when he texted us earlier that week. Honestly, it sounded perfect. An easy fall hike in the Appalachians before the cold really set in. Crisp air, orange leaves still clinging to the trees. Nothing dangerous. Nothing that should have gone wrong. It was me, Wes, Johnny, and Colton. We'd been friends forever. Middle school crew, the type of guys who'd lose touch if not for these random weekend plans. None of us are hardcore hikers, but we've done plenty of day trips. This was just another one. When we rolled up to the trailhead, it looked busy. A few cars lined the gravel lot, people unloading gear, kids running around. That felt good. Safe. This was supposed to be one of those touristy loops anyway, family-friendly, idiot-proof. Except when we walked up to the signboard with the map, Wes gave us that grin of his, the one that usually means trouble. Found a shortcut. He said like it was a secret worth sharing. Shortcut to what? I asked. Better view, less crowded, cuts through the loop so it won't take longer. Trust me. Those two words, trust me, are the reason everything that followed happened. The first part was fine. Wide dirt path, hard-packed from thousands of boots, bright trail markers. We passed families, older couples, even a guy wrangling 2 dogs that looked more like small bears. All normal. Then Wes pointed out a thin line through the leaves, breaking off to the right. No sign, no marker. Just a narrow path that looked like deer made it. That's the one, he said. Are you serious? Johnny asked, eyebrows shooting up. You'll meet back with the main trail, Wes said, like he'd been here before. Look, people clearly use it. He motioned to a couple of faint boot marks half buried in leaves. I hesitated. Every sensible part of me wanted to say no, but Colton just laughed and said, "What's the worst that could happen?" and started down it. So we followed. Because that's what you do when your friends decide something's an adventure. At first, it wasn't bad. Narrower, sure, but manageable. For about half an hour, it even felt like a cool detour. Quiet. tucked away. Then the incline started, steeper, rockier. My calves burned. Every time I asked Wes if we should turn back, he said we were almost there. When we finally stopped for water, I noticed something. The quiet. Not just less noise. Nothing. I realized I hadn't heard a single bird for a while. No wind, no insects. Just us breathing and the crunch of leaves. Seriously. I said, looking at Wes, what if this doesn't loop back? It does, he said, but softer this time, less sure. We didn't turn around because none of us wanted to be the one to kill the vibe. That's how it always works. By 4, the light was shifting, shadows stretching longer, air cooling. I checked my phone. No bars, nothing. Everyone else had the same problem. Okay, Wes said, finally exhaling. Maybe I was off on distance, but we're fine. We can make it before dark. I didn't answer. The question in my head was worse. What if we don't? The trail was basically gone now, just a suggestion under the leaves. My thighs screamed, my throat dry. That's when I saw it. The cabin, set back maybe 30 yards, down a slope, half hidden by bare branches. No trail leading to it, just sitting there like it had grown out of the ground. The roof sagged, patches of moss eating at the shingles. Windows cloudy and gray, impossible to see through. What the hell is that doing out here? Johnny asked. Maybe someone lives there, Colton said. We could ask for directions. Or we don't, Johnny muttered. Because this feels like the start of every horror movie ever. Colton grinned like that made it better. I didn't grin. My stomach had started to twist, like it knew something before I did. Still, when Colton slid down the slope, we followed. Because that's what you do. The porch sagged and groaned under our boots. A single chair sat near the door, empty. We knocked. Nothing. The windows were too dirty to see inside. Forget it, I said. Let's go. We turned to climb back up. And that's when I heard him. If you're lost, I can show you out. The voice came from behind us, calm, close. I spun so fast I nearly slipped. A man stood just a few feet away. Tall, thin. His flannel shirt looked older than we were. His gray hair wasn't neat, more like it had been growing wild for years. And his smile, God, that smile, looked wrong, too wide, too stiff. Like someone had shown him a picture of what a smile is supposed to look like, and he'd copied it badly. We're fine, Wes said quickly. We'll figure it out. The man tilted his head, smile glued on. No, you won't. Not this far in. He stepped toward us slowly, like he had all the time in the world. I'll get you home. You just have to come inside with me first. Inside. The word landed heavy in my gut. No, really, I said. Try to keep my voice even. Failed. We'll manage. His smile cracked and dropped, like someone cut a string holding it up. That was worse than the grin. His eyes were dead now, flat. You sure about that? He asked softly. None of us answered. We just moved. Not a run, not yet, but fast enough that our boots scraped loud against the leaves. We climbed the slope, hearts pounding, hit the faint line of a trail and started down it without looking back. No one spoke. Then came the sound. Footsteps. Behind us. Slow at first, then quicker. I looked back, saw him. Not running, just walking, but closing the distance anyway, like he didn't need to hurry. You'll get turned around, he called out, voice calm but louder now. You won't make it without me. That broke us. We ran, full speed. Branches ripped at my arms, roots grabbed at my boots. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop. The sound of him, those steady, relentless steps, never faded. When we finally burst onto a wide trail, the sky was bleeding orange into black. Then, headlights. A Jeep pulling out of the lot, 2 hikers inside. We waved and screamed like maniacs until they slammed the brakes. They didn't ask questions, just let us pile into the back. I slammed the door and looked out the window, half expecting to see him at the tree line. But there was nothing. We didn't talk on the drive. I'm 32 years old, and last spring I decided to spend a weekend hiking part of the Appalachian Trail. Just a quick solo trip. 2 days out, 1 night in a backcountry shelter. I'd done solo hikes before, and this section was supposed to be beginner-friendly. No big deal. I got an early start on Saturday, parked my car in a small gravel lot by the trailhead, and shouldered my pack. I packed light, sleeping bag, tarp, some food, and a water filter. The trail was dry, weather was decent, everything felt easy. A couple of older hikers passed me on their way back toward the lot. We exchanged the usual trail talk, where you headed, good luck out there, and then they disappeared down the path. After that, I didn't see another soul. By noon, I realized how quiet it was. I mean really quiet. No distant road hum, no planes, not even birds, just my boots scuffing against the dirt. It felt heavy. Not scary yet, just strange enough to notice. I told myself it was fine, kept going. Early afternoon, I hit a ridge where the trail split. One side followed the official route toward the shelter I'd planned on. The other dipped downhill, unmarked. Here's the weird thing. The unmarked trail actually looked more used than the main one. Packed dirt, no overgrowth. Curiosity got me. I figured maybe it led to a stream or a nice view. I told myself I'd check it out for 5 minutes, then double back. The path narrowed almost right away. It twisted and dipped through a mess of trees before flattening into a small clearing. I stopped and pulled out my map. Nothing, no clearing, no side trail, just blank paper where I was standing. I turned around to go back, and that's when my stomach nodded. The path behind me didn't look the same. It was thinner, clogged with brush like no one had used it in years. My boot prints? Gone. Not even one. I told myself it was fine. Just turned around, that's all. Started walking the way I thought I'd come. A few minutes in, doubt crept in, hard. Ground was firm, no sign I'd been there at all. I pulled out my GPS, 0 signal. Tried the map again, tracing every inch. Nothing showed a split. The sun was still high, so I didn't panic yet. I kept walking. Then I saw something that made my chest tighten. A footprint. Not mine. It was big, bigger than my boot, and sunk deep into the mud like whoever made it was carrying weight. Edges were sharp, fresh. Another one a few feet ahead, then another, all leading in the same direction I was heading. I didn't love the idea of following someone else this far off trail, but those prints were the only sign of a way out, so I followed. After a while, the prints started to change. At first, they looked like regular hiking boots. Then the tread faded. The shape spread wider, flatter, until they looked barefoot, human, but wrong. Toes splayed too far apart, arches almost gone. I slowed down without meaning to. My pulse was loud in my ears. Then, snap. A sharp crack behind me, like a branch breaking. I froze and stared into the trees. Nothing moved. I told myself it was a deer. Started walking faster, scanning every shadow. That's when I heard it. A dull thud. Then another, slow, rhythmic, like footsteps pacing me from somewhere back in the trees. I didn't run, not yet, but everything in me screamed to. I locked my eyes on the prints and kept moving fast. After what felt like forever, the trees thinned, and I saw something ahead that made my knees almost give out. A shelter. It looked like one of those official Appalachian Trail shelters. 3 walls, slanted roof, open on one side. I've never been so relieved in my life. I ran the last stretch, dropped my pack inside, and went straight for the emergency radio bolted to the back wall. My hand shook so bad I almost dropped it. But I hit the call button, yelled for help, and gave the last coordinates I remembered. The signal was weak, but someone answered. He told me to stay put. The shelter had a heavy wooden shutter for storms. I yanked it down and slid the bolt across. Then I sat in the dark, back against the wall, gripping that radio like it was a weapon. I tried to breathe slow, but every inhale sounded too loud. Sweat ran down my spine. I could feel each drop trace my skin under my shirt. The air inside was stale, almost damp. My ears strained for anything at all, but it was just silence and the buzz of my own blood. Then it started, footsteps. Slow, careful, deliberate. Coming from the tree line, my throat locked up. I counted them in my head without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. The crunch of weight on dirt stopped just outside the shelter. Nothing for a full minute. Or maybe 10, it felt like an hour. Then the steps started circling, slow arcs, like whoever or whatever was out there wanted me to know they weren't leaving. The boards creaked as something leaned on them from the outside. Pressure. Testing. I held my breath until my chest burned. The steps stopped at the shuttered opening. The wood in front of my face felt thin, too thin. I didn't move, not a sound. My muscles shook from holding still. Silence. So deep I could hear my heartbeat thudding against the back wall like it wanted out. Then came the voice. Low, calm, almost polite. Right against the wood. You're off the trail. My teeth clenched so hard my jaw ached. I didn't answer. Didn't even blink. The voice lingered. Just a presence breathing on the other side of the shutter. Then it was gone. The steps moved away. Slow, steady, fading into the trees. I sat there in the dark, gripping that radio so tight my fingers went numb. Every time the wind brushed the walls, I flinched like it was coming back. I waited like that until the first smear of daylight broke through the gaps. When the rangers finally got there, they said my call barely came through. They unbolted the shutter and helped me out. I scanned the clearing. Empty, but about 10 yards from the shelter, the ground was torn up with footprints. Bare, huge, leading back into the trees. I stared at them until they disappeared between the trunks. Then I turned and walked out without looking back once. The trailhead was barely there. Just a skinny scar of dirt breaking away from the main road. Honestly, if I hadn't been looking for it, I would have driven right past. I eased my truck into the gravel pull-off, cut the engine, and sat for a second, staring through the windshield at what looked like an endless wall of trees. Thick, dark, silent. The Appalachians stretched out beyond that, miles and miles of ridges and valleys. No houses, no noise, nothing but space. And that was exactly why I came. I needed quiet. 2 days to turn my phone off, clear my head, and put some distance between me and everything else. People pay for that kind of therapy, right? I figured I'd just hike it. Everyone in town had told me the same thing: stick to the main trails over and over. Like it was a script. I smiled, nodded, and lied right to their faces. Sure, yeah, the main trails, absolutely. I wasn't here for scenic overlooks with kids yelling and families taking group selfies. I wanted real wilderness, a little risk even. That was the point. I grabbed my pack from the passenger seat and slung it over my shoulders. It felt heavier than it had in the motel this morning, but that's how it always goes. Water, food, tent. By mile 3, everything feels like bricks. I locked the truck and stepped onto the path. Calling it a path was generous. It was more like a memory of a trail. Narrow, faint, winding off into trees like it was trying not to be found. The only reason I even knew it existed was because of some buried post I stumbled across on a hiking forum at 2 in the morning. Some guy swore it was an old maintenance route from the ADS, said it hadn't been used in decades. That sounded perfect. The first few miles went smooth, cold enough that every breath came out like smoke, but hiking warmed me up fast. The ground was soft with dead leaves, and the incline was slow, like the mountain was being polite about it. Around noon, I passed the last official trail marker, nailed into a tree. After that, there was nothing but instinct and the blue dot on my Jeep. I didn't see a soul. No hikers, no hunters, not even a bird after a while. Just trees. Trees on trees on trees, stacked so thick they blurred into gray distance. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful after a while. The kind that feels like something's listening. But my GPS said I was fine, so I kept moving. Hummed a little under my breath just to break the silence. Stupid stuff, like commercial jingles I didn't even like. Anything to make it feel less empty. Then the trail split, not like a clean fork, more like somebody had hacked through brush and given up halfway. Two faint tracks, veering off in opposite directions. I crouched, checked the ground. Left side looked a little more worn, like maybe it had seen a few boots in the last decade. I figured it was as good a guess as any. I was maybe 50 yards in when I saw it, a tin coffee cup sitting in the leaves. Just there, rust chewing at the rim, but it wasn't ancient. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. No initials, no brand, nothing. Just bare metal, a little dirty inside. My first thought was cool, old camper trash. My second thought was, why is it sitting upright, like somebody put it there? I set it down and kept moving. No big deal, forest junk. The next thing was harder to ignore, a boot print, fresh. Edges sharp, soil still dark and damp like it had just been pressed. I crouched, set my own boot beside it. This one was bigger, wider. Could have been a hunter, I told myself. Except the tread was angled back, toward the way I came. That detail wouldn't leave me alone. I picked up the pace, wanted to get camp set before dark. By late afternoon, the trail vanished completely. GPS only now. My blue dot hovered on the faint gray line, but nothing around me looked like the map in my head. Finally, I found a little clearing, big enough for a tent, good enough. I dropped my pack, pitched camp, boiled water for dinner. The silence was thick now, pressing in on all sides. I told myself that was the whole point. I ate, stashed my food far from camp, zipped into my tent, and let the dark take over. Hours later, I woke up with my heart hammering like I'd been sprinting. No dream, no noise, just awake and wired. The air inside the tent was freezing, and outside it was black, not dark, black. No stars, no moon glow, just a wall of nothing beyond the nylon. And then I heard it, soft, too soft, like a fingertip dragging along the tent wall. My mouth went dry. I held my breath and listened. Seconds crawled by. No footsteps, no crunch of leaves, just silence. I eased the zipper down an inch and flicked on my headlamp. The beam swung across a skeleton of trees, pale and bare. Nothing moved. I scanned, slow. Nothing. I zipped up again and lay there, eyes wide open, every nerve screaming. Every creak of the tent frame made me twitch. Every imagined footstep set my pulse slamming. Sleep didn't happen. At first light, I packed in a blur. Shoved everything in my bag, forced down a granola bar that tasted like chalk, and started for the truck. Daylight made it better. It had to. I was halfway down when I saw it. Another boot print, same size, same tread, only this one was next to the first from yesterday. It wasn't there before. The dirt had dried overnight, but the edges of this print were sharp. It had been made after I passed. Someone was following me. I kept walking, trying not to look like I was hurrying. Every few steps, I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing. But the trail, it looked wrong now. Like somebody had swapped it out for another one while I slept. Fallen birch I didn't remember. Twin rocks that weren't there yesterday. Hollow stump I could swear was new. Then I saw the tree, my name carved into the bark. Kalen. The letters were fresh, wood raw and bright against the dark trunk. sap bleeding. I just stood there, staring, brain scrambling for an explanation that didn't exist. Coincidence? Old carving I missed yesterday? No, too fresh. And nobody in this forest should have known my name. I don't even remember letting go of my pack, but I left it right there on the trail and ran. Branches whipped my arms, thorns tore my jacket. I didn't care, just ran. GPS bouncing in my hand, battery bleeding, my blue dot spinning every time I stumbled. Didn't matter, couldn't stop. Roots grabbed at my boots. My lungs burned, my legs felt like lead. Still ran, until the trail spat me out at a thin creek I swear wasn't there yesterday. On the opposite bank, another tree. My name again, bigger. Letters hacked deep, splinters curling like ribs. Didn't cross. I turned uphill and tore into the brush, leaving the map behind. Didn't care if I got lost, I just needed out. My ears strained for sound, any sound, but the forest stayed dead quiet. Only my breath. Somehow worse than hearing footsteps. No idea how long I ran. When the trees finally broke and I saw the glint of metal ahead, my knees almost gave out. My truck, sitting in the empty pull-off, dusted with leaves like nothing happened. Relief slammed into me, then cracked. Something was under the wiper. A strip of birch bark, edges curling, pale against the glass. My name carved into it, Taylor. I ripped it off and hurled it into the woods. Jumped in the truck, jammed the key in with hands shaking so hard I could barely hold it. Engine roared, tires spat gravel. I didn't stop until I hit pavement and saw houses and people and signs of life again. A friend of mine, Alex, had once mentioned a quieter stretch of the Appalachian Trail. Said it wasn't as crowded as the usual routes and had these long, uninterrupted paths where you could walk for hours without bumping into anyone. That sounded like heaven to me. I planned a 3-day trip. Nothing ambitious, just enough to reset my brain. Packed carefully, too. Tent, sleeping bag, solid boots, water filter, plenty of food. Even threw in an extra power bank for my phone, because I like to believe I'm the responsible type. Downloaded offline maps, too. It felt good, honestly, like I was preparing for some wholesome Instagram-worthy solo adventure. The first day was everything I wanted. I parked at the trailhead, hoisted my pack, and started walking. An hour in, and the noise in my head started to fade. The only sounds were my boots hitting dirt and the occasional chirp way off in the distance. I ran into a couple of other hikers early on, but by late afternoon they were long gone. By the time I found a clearing to camp in, it felt like I'd stepped into a pocket of time where no one else existed. Cooked a quick meal, crawled into my tent, and passed out almost instantly. Perfect day. The second day was fine at first. I woke up, ate a protein bar, and packed up feeling smug about how well this was going. I wasn't some guy getting lost on day one. I was practically a wilderness pro. Then, around mid-morning, I hit a fork in the trail. One path looked well-worn. The other was basically getting eaten alive by brush. My map didn't show any split, but the obvious choice seemed, well, obvious. The worn one had to be the main route, so I took it. About 2 hours later, I realized something was off. I hadn't seen a single blaze marker. If you've hiked the Appalachian Trail, you know that's weird. Those little white rectangles are everywhere. After 2 hours, nothing. Pulled out my map. Still no sign of a fork anywhere near where I thought I was. Then I pulled out my phone. Signal was barely hanging on, GPS spinning like it was drunk. I waited, hoping it would pin me. But nope, signal dropped completely after a few minutes. That's when I turned back. Or at least, I thought I did. Walked for over an hour, but nothing looked familiar. The incline felt wrong. Trees didn't look the same. At first, I tried to brush it off. You're tired, you're overthinking it. But the pit in my stomach said otherwise. By the time I admitted I was lost, the phone was a brick. No bars, no text, no GPS, just that smug little no service, like it was mocking me. I figured I'd just keep moving and hit the main trail eventually. That optimism lasted maybe 3 more hours. The trees started to feel endless. Sunlight dimmed faster than I expected, the way it does out there, where shadows stretch and suddenly it's like someone shut off the day. I didn't want to stop. Everything in me screamed not to stop, but I had to. Picked a flat patch between a few big trees, dropped my pack, and set up the tent with hands that didn't feel steady anymore. Dinner was another protein bar I barely tasted. I tried to talk myself down. People get turned around all the time. Tomorrow you backtrack, you find the trail. Done. I woke up sometime after midnight. No clue what pulled me out of sleep, but one second I was dreaming, the next I was staring at the nylon above me, wide awake. That's when I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, not far from me. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I didn't unzip the tent, didn't move, just listened. The steps were steady, not crashing, not hurrying, just moving. Then they stopped. I lay there for what felt like an hour, waiting for them to start again. Nothing. My throat was dry, and my heartbeat was so loud I was sure it could be heard outside the tent. Eventually, I convinced myself it was an animal. It had to be a deer, a raccoon, something. I shut my eyes and willed myself to sleep. And somehow, I did. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was my pack. I always keep it leaning against the tent. It was sitting about 3 feet away. The straps were all buckled, neat as a gift. And my water bottle was gone, just gone. The ground around the tent looked untouched. No drag marks, no prints I could see. I just stood there, staring at the empty space where it had been clipped. I told myself an animal could have taken it. Sure, why not? Never mind that the pack looked like someone had picked it up, checked it over, and put it down carefully. I didn't think too hard. I just shoved everything inside, threw the pack on my back, and started walking. The day stretched on, and the forest didn't give me anything back. No blazes, no people, no sound except what I made myself. Every so often, I'd hear something behind me, a twig snapping, leaves shifting. But when I turned, there was nothing. By late afternoon, panic wasn't creeping anymore. It was just there, like a second heartbeat. My legs felt heavy, my throat was raw, and the idea of spending another night out here made me want to scream. Then I saw it through the trees, a wooden shelter. Relief hit like a wave. Climbed the steps, ready to drop my pack and collapse. I stepped inside and froze. Against the back wall, standing upright, was my water bottle, the same one that had vanished during the night. I didn't think, didn't try to explain it, just backed out, slung the pack over my shoulders and started walking. Fast at first, then faster. Then I was running. Branches tore at my arms and face, but I didn't care. I didn't care about direction anymore. I just wanted out. And then I heard it again. Footsteps behind me, keeping pace. I ran until my lungs felt like they were splitting open. And then, through the trees, I saw it. A flash of metal, a road sign. When my boots hit asphalt, I almost dropped to my knees. I stumbled along until a car came around the bend. Waving my arms like a lunatic, the driver slowed down, probably wondering if I'd lost my mind. Which, fair. I climbed in without explaining a thing. They drove me to the nearest ranger station. The rangers asked if I could show them where it happened. I tried. Pulled up maps, traced routes, but nothing matched. No fork in the trail, no shelter, nothing. That water bottle standing upright in that empty shelter, that's what I think about most. Someone carried it there. Someone moved my pack while I slept. I haven't hiked alone since. I was 28 when it happened, and I had planned out the trip meticulously. It was supposed to be simple. Just a quick overnight hike up to McDowell Ridge, camp for a night, and then be back by noon the next day. It wasn't my first time hiking the Appalachian Trail, so I was familiar with the routine. I packed light, making sure to bring only the essentials: a tent, a water filter, a couple of freeze-dried meals, and a paper map as a backup. I felt confident. I've done this plenty of times before. I didn't expect anything to go wrong. The hike started like any other. By late afternoon, I'd already made good progress and was a few miles in. I hadn't crossed paths with anyone for hours, but that wasn't unusual. This part of the trail wasn't exactly a tourist hotspot. It was quiet, the kind of quiet where the only sounds were the crunch of my boots on the dry, fallen leaves beneath me. I kept my head down, checking my watch as I walked. 5:12 p.m. It was the perfect time to start looking for a place to camp. The map showed a spur trail just ahead that would lead me to a small clearing. At least, that's what the map said, but the spur trail never came. I walked for another half hour, convinced it was just around the corner. It didn't show up. When I finally stopped to pull out the map again, I felt a sinking sensation in my stomach. The landscape wasn't matching what I was seeing. The ridgeline should have been off to the right, but it wasn't there. And the stream that was supposed to be crossing the trail, it wasn't anywhere in sight. I flipped the map over, looked at it again, and then checked my phone. No signal, which I had expected, but the GPS screen just stared back at me, blank. The little spinning circle was all I could see. All right, fine, no big deal. I'd backtrack. I turned around, trying to stay calm and make sense of things. I'd retrace my steps until I found that spur trail. It wasn't far, except when I turned around, something felt off. It wasn't just the trail. The trail itself looked different. It was narrower now, like the trees were crowding in on me. The roots beneath my feet twisted in shapes I didn't remember. I stopped. The last few steps hadn't felt right, but I couldn't pinpoint why. I chalked it up to the setting sun messing with my eyes. Maybe some shadows playing tricks on me. But it wasn't just that. The trail didn't look the same. Not really. It felt like something had changed while I wasn't paying attention. I kept walking, though. It didn't make sense to stand there and freak out. My breathing sped up a little, but I ignored it. I needed to keep moving. Then I saw the marker. At first, I thought it was just some random post someone had stuck in the ground. Maybe a leftover from when the trail was maintained. But the closer I got, the more uneasy I felt. It was a wooden stake about waist high, jammed awkwardly into the earth. The top was splintered. The thing that really made me stop, though, were the marks. There were deep gouges, like someone had carved them into the wood. Horizontal cuts, spaced out, at least a dozen of them. They looked deliberate, methodical, like someone had been keeping score. I don't know why I stared at it for so long. Maybe it was because I couldn't wrap my head around it. My brain kept trying to explain it, but every explanation felt weak. I shook my head, trying to push it out of my mind, but it wouldn't go away. I moved on, fast. Every step felt heavier. My boots sank into the softer soil, and the air around me seemed to thicken. I don't know how else to explain it. It was like the atmosphere changed, pressing in around me. And then, ahead of me, I saw an opening in the trees. A clearing. My heart did this quick leap in my chest. Maybe this was it, the clearing from my map. I quickened my pace, but when I stepped into it, the sense of relief I'd been expecting didn't come. The clearing was wrong. In the center, there was a ring of logs, propped upright like some kind of makeshift fence. The logs were stripped of bark and sharpened at the ends. Inside that circle, there were bones. Animal bones. Piles of them stacked neatly, too neatly, like someone had intentionally arranged them. I could see deer skulls, rib cages, and something larger. Something broken in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. I stepped back without thinking, my stomach doing the sickening flip. I didn't move any closer. I couldn't. There was something off about the whole scene. It felt like an invitation, a trap. I didn't give it another thought. I turned around and headed back the way I'd come, but it wasn't the same trail. The path was different. The turns didn't line up. The slope changed direction. It was like I was walking in a dream where the scenery kept rearranging itself. I felt like I couldn't trust the ground beneath my feet. My chest tightened. My breath started to come in short bursts. I tried to stay calm, but my mind was racing. I needed to get out of there. I needed to find the way back. But then I heard it. Behind me. A soft sound. Something shifting on the ground. I froze, heart hammering, straining to hear over the rustling leaves. Nothing. Silence. I told myself it was just an animal, probably a deer or something. But when I looked back, I saw him. Someone was standing on the trail. They were far at first, maybe 30 yards behind me, standing perfectly still. The figure didn't move, didn't even sway with the wind, just stood there. It looked wrong. The shape was all off, too tall, too thin, the limbs didn't look right, and the figure didn't shift, didn't adjust its stance. It was like it was carved from wood, unmoving. I stared and stared. My head screamed at me to look away, to just keep walking, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. The seconds stretched into minutes. Finally, I forced myself to turn away and picked up my pace. Not a run. Yet. My brain knew better. Prey doesn't run unless it has to. But every time I glanced over my shoulder, the figure was closer. Still, it didn't move. Still, it didn't make a sound. When it closed the gap to about 20 yards, I couldn't do it anymore. I turned and bolted. My legs burned, my ribs ached with every stride, but I didn't stop. The weight of my pack slammed against my back and branches grabbed at my arms as I rushed through the trees. I didn't care where I was going, just that I had to get away. I ran until I looked up and realized something that made my stomach drop to my feet. The figure wasn't behind me anymore. It was in front of me, standing in the middle of the trail, blocking it. Its head was tilted unnaturally, like it was inspecting me. It didn't move, didn't chase, it just waited. Every instinct screamed at me to scream, to run, but I didn't. I couldn't. Something kept me still for just a second longer. And then I broke. I veered off the trail, crashing through the underbrush. The ground was uneven, the branches snatched at my clothes, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. My heart pounded in my throat. I didn't know where I was running anymore. I didn't care. I just ran, blindly until my legs screamed for rest. I finally stopped when I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. Another stake. It was taller than the others, with deeper gouges. So many gouges that I lost count. And just a few feet away, there was another one. And another. I looked around. I was back at the clearing, the same logs, the same piles of bones. And now there was something new. My backpack was sitting in the middle of the ring. As if it had been placed there, I hadn't dropped it. It had been on my back the entire time. But now it was here, with the bones. My stomach twisted. I felt lightheaded, but I didn't stop. I didn't look at the pack any longer. I just ran again. No direction, no plan, just running as fast as I could until my legs couldn't carry me anymore. When I finally found my way out, I stumbled onto a gravel road, my legs buckling beneath me. A car pulled up, headlights blinding me. The driver leaned out, asking if I was okay. I could barely speak. The words tumbled out in a breathless rush. "Get me out!" The rest of the night was a blur. I don't remember much except for the long drive back to town, the silent fear that settled deep in my bones. The next day, I checked my phone. I hadn't noticed the time during the whole ordeal, but when I looked at my watch, I realized something that nearly made my heart stop. The last time I had checked it, it was 5:12 p.m. Now it was 3:47 a.m. And that trail? I've never been able to find it again. I was about 3 hours into the hike when it hit me how quiet everything had gotten. Not just quieter, silent. No birds, no rustle of leaves, no wind through the trees. Just the sound of my boots pressing into dirt and the creak of my pack straps when I shifted. At first I brushed it off. The Appalachian trails go dead quiet sometimes, especially in late fall. It wasn't exactly peak season for wildlife. That's part of why I'd pick this stretch. Off-season, no crowds, just me and some old forest. The plan was simple. One night out, just me. I'd been burning out, needed a reset. The kind you only get when you're completely off the grid. I'd start at the south access point, follow the ridge up, camp near a marked creek, then hike back the next morning. Easy. I packed light. One-man tent, sleeping bag, trail mix, a paper map for backup because I'm not a complete idiot. My phone had an offline GPS app, so I wasn't worried. I even checked the battery twice before I left. 83% when I started. The first part of the day felt like exactly what I needed. Cool air, steady climb, the crunch of leaves under my boots. I fell into a rhythm and stayed there for hours. Didn't pass a single hiker after the first hour, but that was the whole point. Get away from people, from noise, from everything. By the time I hit the creek, the sun was dipping lower than I wanted. My phone read 4:50 p.m. That surprised me. I'd been sure it was earlier. The light was fading faster than I expected too, like someone hit fast forward. The creek itself was barely a trickle, water sliding over slick black rocks. The ground was a mess of mud and soft patches. I crouched down and pressed a boot into the dirt. It sank half an inch. No way I was pitching a tent there. The map showed another clearing about a mile up the ridge, so I decided to push on. That's when the whole thing started to tilt sideways. The trail narrowed. The trees seemed closer, almost leaning in over the path. The dirt underfoot turned darker, like it had soaked up water, even though the sky was clear and the leaves overhead were dry. It felt like walking into a place where something had gone stale. I tried to ignore it. Trails change as you climb, that's all it was. But then the silence. It wasn't just quiet. It felt like sound had been peeled out of the air. I kept moving, eyes on the path, counting steps just to keep my brain occupied. Somewhere around 20 minutes later, I spotted a tree with a red blaze, a trail marker nailed into the bark at shoulder height. Normal enough, except something about it snagged in my head. The nail was bent downward. The paint looked dull, flaking, like it had been there a decade. I walked on. 10 minutes later, there it was again. Same tree, same bent nail, same faded paint. I stopped cold. My pack straps bit into my shoulders as I stood there staring at it. I'd been walking straight. No side trails, no loops. But there it was again. I pulled out my phone. The screen lit up. 5:17 p.m. I opened the GPS app. The blue dots spun in circles, then froze on a blank grid. No service, obviously, but the compass should have worked. It didn't. I felt this small, stupid flicker of irritation, like my phone had picked the worst possible time to be useless. I shoved it back in my pocket and picked up the pace. The trail started sloping downward even though it should have been climbing. I didn't even notice it first. My boot scuffed against something slick, and that's when it hit me. I was losing elevation. That didn't make sense. My breathing sounded louder now, like it was the only thing in the world. Another 10 minutes and the tree showed up again. Same bent nail, same dead paint. That's when something inside me cracked a little. Not full-on panic, just this cold, creeping pressure. Like someone tightening a belt around my ribs. I told myself I was tired, that the Appalachian trails are full of weird bends and old logging paths that can mess with your sense of direction. I repeated that like a mantra while moving faster, almost trotting now. And then, finally, I saw it. A break in the trees. A clearing. It felt like a miracle. The ground leveled out, open space spreading under a sky that looked darker than it should. Right in the center was a fire ring, stones blackened with ash. Relief slammed into me so hard, I almost laughed. I dropped my pack and crouched by the stones, hands on my knees, sucking air like I just outrun something. That's when I saw the other pack. It sat on the far side of the fire ring, same color as mine, same design, but older. Frayed straps. Faded fabric like it had been sitting there for years. I stared at it for a long time before reaching out with my foot and nudging it. It didn't move much. Heavy. Against every single instinct screaming at me, I unzipped it. On top was a folded map. Same trail, same markings. But a red circle was drawn around the creek I'd stopped at earlier. Under the map was a watch. Screen cracked, but the numbers were clear. 5:17. I checked my phone. 5:17. I dropped the watch and zipped the pack so fast my fingers fumbled. Grabbed my own pack without thinking and ran. No plan, no sense of direction. Just raw animal need to get away. The trail ahead looked different now. Darker. Narrower. The trees felt like they were pressing in, branches clawing at my shoulders as I barreled through. My legs burned, lungs on fire, but I didn't stop until I saw it. A wooden post through the trees. A trailhead sign. I ran for it like it was the last real thing in the world. The gravel under my boots felt like salvation. My car sat where I left it, quiet, dusted with leaves. I threw my pack in the back, jumped in and turned the key. Engine roared to life. Dashboard lit up. 5:17. I drove until the signal bars returned. The time blinked and jumped to 8:42 p.m. I never went back. The trip was supposed to be a group thing. 3 of us, camping out in the Appalachian Mountains for the weekend. We'd been planning it for weeks, trading gear lists, joking about who'd forget their sleeping bag, that kind of thing. Then at the last second, the others bailed. One texted me at midnight saying work called him in. The other said he woke up puking. I probably should have called the whole thing off. But I had already taken time off, packed everything, and driven halfway there in my head. You ever get so set on an idea that backing out feels worse than doing it alone? That's where I was. So I figured, screw it, a solo trip. Just a couple of nights, no big deal. I picked a spot I knew from an old hiking route, a little clearing a few miles off a logging road. Remote enough for quiet, close enough that if something went wrong, I could hoof it back in a couple hours. The drive ate up most of the day. By the time I turned off the main road onto gravel, the sun was already leaning west. I rolled the windows down and let the cold air in while the truck bounced along the ruts. Tall pines lined the track, closing in like green walls. When the road narrowed so much the branches scraped the sides, I figured that was my stop. Parked the truck, slung on my pack, and started walking. At first it felt great. Just me, the woods, and that kind of stillness you only get out here. The kind that makes you realize how loud life usually is. About 40 minutes in, I found the clearing. Small, uneven, ringed tight with trees, and behind it the land dropped off into a valley that looked bottomless in the fading light. Perfect for a tent. I set up quick, staked everything deep, rolled out the sleeping bag before the daylight bled away completely. By dusk, I had a fire going. The smoke curled up into the dark like a thin gray ribbon. Dinner was one of those dehydrated stews you add boiling water to. Not good, but warm. I ate it sitting on a fallen log, watching sparks spin up and disappear. No cell signal out there, but honestly, that was the point. No buzzing, no notifications, no work emails pretending to be urgent. Just quiet. By 10, the fire was down to embers and the cold had started creeping in. I doused the flames, zipped myself inside the tent, killed the headlamp. Sleep came easy until it didn't. The first time I woke up, it wasn't because of a sound, it was because there wasn't one. You know that weird silence that feels wrong, like someone hit mute on the world? That. I lay there, ears straining, trying to figure out what was missing. Then it clicked. No insects. Not a single chirp, no soft rustle of leaves, just this hollow, suffocating stillness. My chest tightened. I told myself it was nothing. Animals do this. Chain reaction. Something big moves through, everything goes quiet. Probably a bear, or a deer, or something. I checked my watch. 1:13 a.m. I reached for the headlamp. That's when I noticed the boots. I'd left them by the tent flap before I fell asleep. I'm sure of it. Now, they weren't there. First thought, maybe I kicked them in my sleep. I swept the light around inside the tent. Empty. The boots were gone. My pulse started hammering in my ears. I unzipped the flap an inch, just enough to stick the light out, and swept it across the clearing. They were there, sitting side by the dead fire pit, perfectly aligned, like someone had carried them over and placed them with care. I stared so long my eyes burned, trying to convince myself I'd done it. Maybe I'd gotten up half asleep to pee and didn't remember. But here's the thing. The laces were straight. The soles lined up perfectly. I don't even do that at home. I unzipped the tent the rest of the way and stepped out barefoot. The ground was freezing, the kind of cold that bites. I swung the light around, scanning the tree line. Nothing. No footprints in the dirt, no bent branches. Just the boots, sitting there like obedient little dogs. I grabbed them, backed into the tent, yanked the zipper shut so hard I almost ripped it. My hands were shaking like hell. I shoved the boots into the far corner like they were toxic and just sat there, breathing fast, waiting for something, anything. The silence was crushing. It had weight. It felt like it was pressing against the tent walls. I stayed like that until my breathing evened out. Told myself it didn't matter, that I was just tired. Eventually, I lay back down, still in my clothes, bag pulled up to my chin, and I swear, I almost convinced myself until it happened again. Same thing, jerk awake like someone snapped a finger in my face. Same weird alertness like my body knew before my brain did. It was 3:41 a.m. and the first thing I saw was the boots, not in the corner where I'd shoved them, at the foot of my sleeping bag, and they weren't empty. 2 legs stretched out of them, thin, almost gray in the headlamp glow. They disappeared under the tent wall, like whoever they belonged to was lying half inside with me, half outside on the dirt. I couldn't move. My mind just locked up, looping the same thought. This isn't real. This isn't real. But the legs didn't twitch, didn't breathe, just lay there. Then the fabric by my head bulged, slow, like a hand pressing in from the outside. That broke me. I ripped the zipper down and bolted. No boots, no shirt, just me in the cold, ripping through my chest like knives. I ran blind through the trees, snapping branches, tripping on roots until I stumbled onto the logging road. I don't know how long I stood there, barefoot and shaking, before headlights cut through the dark. A ranger's truck rolled up, beams flooding me like a stage light. I must have looked insane. Mud to my knees, barefoot, babbling about someone in my tent. When they followed me back at dawn, the clearing was empty. The tent had collapsed like something had crushed it. My gear was scattered. The boots were gone. Now I tell people it was a bear. They buy it. Easier than the truth. I started my hike at sunrise, and I didn't tell anyone where I was going. That wasn't weird for me. I usually hike alone. Honestly, that was the point. I needed some quiet. The last few months had been a constant wall of noise, sirens, honking cars, people yelling in the street, even at night. My head felt stuffed full of static. I just wanted a day where the only thing I heard was my own breathing and my boots on dirt. There's this section of trail near White Brook I've always loved. Whenever life starts grinding me down, I go there. It's familiar enough that I feel safe, but big enough to really get lost in a good way. So that morning, I parked near this small trailhead tucked off a back road, killed the engine, and sat for a second just listening to the nothing. Then I grabbed my pack, locked the car, and started walking. The first mile was pure autopilot. My body knew the rhythm, left foot, right foot, repeat. The air felt cool against my skin, still clinging to the dampness from last night's rain. The ground squished a little in spots, but nothing bad. The path stretched ahead like it always did, unrolling between the trees. No hikers, no voices, just me, a few bird calls, and the occasional crack of a twig. Every step pulled another knot out of my chest. I passed a couple of crushed beer cans half buried in leaves and muttered under my breath. Some people just can't treat a trail like anything other than a trash can. Whatever. not my job. I kicked one off to the side and kept moving. After a while, I stopped even thinking about the city, about work, about everything. My mind finally started to loosen. That was the whole reason I came out here. 2 hours in, I hit something that didn't make sense. The trail split. I actually stopped walking, like my brain had hit a wall. There shouldn't have been a fork. I know this section. It's one way in, one way out. Always has been. I stood there staring, trying to make sense of it. The left fork looked like what I remembered. Dirt worn down to smooth brown, old trail blazes faded almost white on the trees. The right fork? Totally different, fresh. The soil was dark and raw, like a wound in the ground. Roots hacked clean where someone had cut through. No markers, no sign, just a new path. I should have gone left, I knew that. Every logical thought in my head said left. But there was this itch in my brain, this little whisper. What if this leads to something no one else knows about? An overlook? A shortcut? Something cool? Curiosity is stupid like that. So I ignored the voice of reason and went right. At first it was fine, a little narrow but nothing sketchy. Then the trees started pressing in. Branches knitted together overhead until the sky disappeared completely. The air felt heavier, not warmer, just thicker, like it was sitting on my shoulders. My steps got louder in my own ears, every crunch too sharp. After a while, it didn't feel like a trail anymore. It felt like a tunnel someone forgot to finish digging. That's when I saw the first thing, a black backpack leaning against a tree. Mud streaked across the sides like someone had dragged it, but the zippers were still shiny. It didn't look like it had been out there long. I stopped, scanned the trees. Nothing. No one. Hello? My voice sounded way too loud, and the sound just died in the air. No echo, no answer. I crouched to check the ground. No footprints, no scuff marks, just leaves lying perfectly flat, like the forest had gone back and smoothed everything over after someone left. I stood there way too long before walking on, faster this time. My heart was doing this slow, annoying thump, like it knew something I didn't. 15 minutes later, I saw the second thing, a shoe. Gray, frayed around the edges, tongue sticking out like some weird dead animal. I picked it up. It was stiff, dry inside. Whoever lost it hadn't been here today, maybe not even this week. I dropped it and kept moving. My stomach had started to knot so tight it hurt, and every part of me wanted to turn back. But for some reason, forward felt safer, like if I turned around, something would be waiting for me, watching. So I didn't look back. I just pushed on. The trail kept shrinking until it was barely wider than my boots. The ground got soft, sucking faintly at my soles every time I lifted my foot. That's when the smell hit. Metallic, sharp, like pennies left in a glass of water too long. It settled in the back of my throat, sticky and sour. I yanked out my phone. Weirdly, I still had bars. Opened the map. The little blue dot spun like a drunk, then froze. No trail lines, no names. Just empty white space around that dot, like the world ended outside of it. That's when I heard it. At first, I told myself it was just branches moving. Wind I couldn't feel. But then the sound kept coming. Slow, steady, a drag, like something heavy sliding through leaves. Long pull, pause, another pull. I turned around and there was something there. At first glance, I thought it was a man crawling. Hands and knees, head down, moving slow, clothes shredded into strips that hung like dead vines. His skin wasn't dirty, it was colorless, gray like damp paper. His head hung forward, hair dangling like weeds over his face. I froze. "Hey," I said. "Stupid." My voice cracked and came out soft, like I didn't want him to hear it. "Are you hurt?" He stopped. Then his elbows bent backward, sharp and wrong, like broken hinges snapping the wrong way. And then he moved again, faster now, still low to the ground, limbs jerking like something trying to remember how they worked. I ran, branches clawed at my arms, tore at my jacket. Behind me, the sound changed, less dragging, more pounding. Elbows and knees hitting the dirt hard, like hammers. He was faster than anything crawling should ever be. I didn't look back. Couldn't. The trail twisted in ways that made no sense, looping back on itself like intestines. My breath sawed through my teeth. My chest burned like someone had poured fire into my lungs. And then, I crashed into a clearing I didn't recognize. Bare earth in a perfect oval, no signs, no benches, no road, just trees standing too close together, leaning in like they wanted to see what would happen next. I spun in a circle, heart hammering so hard it hurt, no clue where to go. And then I saw him again, crawling out of the tree line, slower this time, head cocked at an angle that made my neck ache just looking at it. His mouth hung open, not wide, just slack, like a door someone left ajar. His hair slid off his face in strings, and I swear I saw his elbows twitch like they were ready to bend wrong again. I bolted. After that, it's all fragments in my head. Trees blurring past, my lungs ripping themselves apart. The burn of air that wouldn't go deep enough. And then, gravel under my boots like gunfire. A fire road. I didn't think, just ran. When asphalt showed up, I almost screamed. My car sat there like salvation. I yanked the keys out with fingers that didn't feel connected to me, dove inside, slammed the lock, and just sat there gripping the wheel until the shaking stopped enough to drive. Back home, I checked my phone. Map history was gone. Nothing past the fork. No breadcrumb trail, no timestamp. Just a dot at the trailhead and then white space. Like those 3 hours didn't exist. I haven't gone hiking since.